This is the Inkpulp podcast. This is the Inkpulp podcast. Comics, hip hop, life. Welcome to the Inkpulp podcast. This is the second in a series of skulls. As I explained before, these were experiments. So you can see me now trying to establish. I have a very wet brush because I just started inking. And if memory serves, I believe it was a fresh batch of my own formula of ink. And usually when the batch is really fresh, it's a little thinner than I like, so it takes a little longer to get dry, but it seems like it's drying out pretty good. And because I just started, my brush was freshly dipped in the water dish, but it's drying out nicely. I can see it now. And I'm establishing my thicks, and I'm very quickly getting my thinner lines established on the edge of the teeth because I want the edge of the teeth to feel thin, like a tooth does. So by going a little thinner there, I'm really trying to capture that. And there again, you see those thin lines on the faces of the planes that are facing the light. And there's another example, some thinner lines where they break up a little more. So I'm trying to use the dry brush more to indicate where the light is, just by the wetness of the mark making or the thickness. I mean, typically we talk about the thickness of the line determining that. But now I'm also stepping into a zone where I'm thinking about the wetness. How purely black is the mark I'm making? And is that representative of some shadow work, or is it representative of where the light is hitting? So I'm working on that. I also like those marks I made, these little jagged marks. They're nice for rendering. They're not just a line. They have a little texture to them. And they also kind of give the illusion of fading from a dark to a light. I mean, it's a very exaggerated illusion, but nonetheless, that's where the idea comes from. It's feathering. And there I did it again. So as I'm going on this skull, again, this is the second in my experiment. I'm a little more comfortable. And I didn't mention this on the first one. I'm using a size 3 brush, which is a little bigger than I typically use. I have worked with a size 3 a lot. Oh, here, let's talk about this. So there I wanted the whites of the eyes to, not the whites, it's a skull, but I wanted these little like bursts of light to creep into the very center of the skull, and I went for something. But as you will see, I think soon, or maybe I didn't make that decision yet. I'm pretty sure later on I decide I don't like it and I just fill it in with black. You know, sometimes the experiments just don't work, but that's good. They inform you. I mean, I always talk about listening to your drawing or listening to your painting. It'll tell you what it needs. And what I like about this process is it gives me room to experiment and play. I'm confident enough and experienced enough and skilled enough that mistakes I make, I can usually pull out of. Or if I leave them, I just leave them and they're fine the way they are. So that's all good stuff good for my confidence, I guess is what I should say. Yeah, it's a lot of confidence involved in inking, especially with a brush. It just is. So here, being that I'm getting more comfortable, I'm also, I think I touched on this on the last episode, but I've inked so many pages and have gotten so comfortable with mark making, with understanding my mark making, that I'm able to riff like I am a little bit here. I know I'm not riffing a ton, And I'm thinking about doing a series of recorded drawings where I don't have any pencil work and I just go in with the brush. But I've got a library of marks in my head, and I know what they mean and I know what purpose they serve. So I'm thinking about exploring that. But I like the idea of discovering newer marks, and that's what I'm constantly trying to do. And here I'm starting to remember things as I go along. I know on the sides of the skull next to the teeth, I want to give the sensation of that front jaw, like having some curve to it, coming closer to you in the front teeth and receding away from you in the back teeth. So I'm going to do some stuff in there later. And then here, just lightly getting in there. It's nice to play with dry brush. It just is. And I have some shadow work in the pencil. Again, maybe you didn't listen to the first episode, and this is the first one you're hearing. This series of skulls, there's 3 of them in total, I drew. They're maybe 3/4 of an inch tall, the drawings, and I scanned them and blew them up in Photoshop and printed them out in blue. And I'm just inking directly over it. They were small enough that I could get the drawing pretty much where I wanted. I mean, it's penciled pretty tightly. I know I keep talking about leaving area to riff, and I am, because normally when I pencil at the same size I ink, my pencil is very much informing the exact type of mark, whereas here it's more of a suggestion. And when I sit down and ink it, I'm making decisions based on the suggestion. It's like if I were to have penciled this normally, it's as if someone told you exactly how to do something and you were following their instructions. But what I'm doing here, it's as if someone had suggested a means of doing something, but was more concerned with you just getting to the end no matter how you needed to get there. So you follow the suggestions and you stray from them when you feel they're not helping. So now I've got a big shadow mass on the front of the skull's forehead. And I know, normally I'm going to do these marks right here, these parallel hatch marks. And I'm going to fill it in with black, and I'm going to fade them in because I like how it creates a value shift in the shadow, which is really important to me. I've talked about that before. I used to work very graphic. I used to work totally flat, and now I'm really interested in bringing value into the darks. And I've said this before, I think, so I apologize if I'm repetitive, but it's really studying the work of Frank Frazetta, where you can see there's a lot of play in the dark areas. From a distance, they just read as dark, but up close, you can see there's work in the dark. And I think it's more true to life that way, where in the shadows, you still see information, and you can play with where the information goes to absolute black and where it's like a 90% dark or an 80% dark. And Mike Mignola, the artist who created Hellboy, comes very much from a Frazetta school of thinking as applied to drawing. And what he has done is taken Frazetta's graphic quality and just ran with that idea and left it graphic. So in like the world of Hellboy, it's solid black or it's solid white. There's really very little interpretation in the dark areas, very little exploration in the dark areas. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's an amazing thing. I love the graphic nature of Mignola's work, and I think for the comics form, it's really an excellent way to work, because it treats drawings very much like a letter. It's a storytelling device where the drawing acts like an icon, just like any typeface does. It's pure black, pure white usually, and very easy to read. So I like that. And I worked that way for a long time myself. I just felt limited in it. I felt like I wasn't getting me. It was me looking at Mike Mignola. and it was discovering the work of Kevin Nolan, where I was like, he's still graphic, but he's opening up this graphic world to some rendering and some dark grays and stuff, and from there going into Frazetta's paintings. So that's skull number 2. Stamp it and sign it and call it a day. Thanks again for listening. This is the Inkpulp podcast. This is the Inkpulp podcast. Comics, hip hop, life,